My name is Amy Romano, and I'm the acting director of CDB. And I was just expressing our appreciation for meeting with you today, and I'll speak louder, but if you can't hear me back there, please raise your hand. We always are looking to increase our opportunities with bidders, increase the bidding pool, increase diversity amongst the bidding pool. That benefits us greatly. We have several members from CDB here today, and we're looking to get ideas, and also are available to answer any questions you may have about our process and procedures. And I know many of you might know some of the panel, but if you would allow me just a moment, I'll introduce them to the group. We have Brent Lance to the far right. He's our Quality-Based Selection Administrator, QBS, for Architects and Engineers Selection. Don Broughton, who is our Contracts Administrator here at CDB. With me is Jesse Martinez, very popular fellow. He's our FEP Coordinator. And also James
FEP, I'm sorry?
Fair Employment Practices.
Okay.
Thank you. We speak in a lot of acronyms here, so please do not hesitate to ask. Fair Employment Practices. And then James Cockrell is to the far left, who is representing our construction site today. So we didn't have any sort of program or anything prepared. We just wanted to have a dialogue. So Mr. Tyler, if you wanted to take it from here, that would be fine.
I appreciate that, so thank you, Amy.
And again, in the back, just kind of tap or clear your throat, anything if you can't hear as we talk through the proceedings. Before we get started, just to let you know the basic format is, we've got a couple of agenda items that we're going to address. This should probably go about 15 to 20 minutes of stating the agenda items, basic conversation, and we'll cut it off at the 30-minute mark, if that's okay, and then we'll open it up for everybody else. If there's any type of questions concerning the agenda items or anything that might be outside of the agenda items that you might want to talk to the Capital Development Board about. So is that fair, everyone? Okay. So just to what you started out, Amy, I appreciate everybody here being here from the Capital Development Board.
What if I make you? We also have Jacqueline O'Day. I'm sorry, she's over to the side. She's our Chief of Staff and our Legislative Coordinator, and that's my omission. I apologize. Please continue.
Okay, no worries. And so when we get together, the one thing we want to do is want to find strategic partnerships. And there are a lot of things that line up with the Capital Development Board, the ones like Chamber of Commerce and our members having a very strong strategic partnership. So what you talked about, Amy, is one thing that we're all looking for is solutions. Where there can be a mutually beneficial relationship that goes forward, because obviously if you can get, from your side, if you can get contractors, whether that be on the professional services side, the contract for the construction management side, you want people to be able to deliver their product or service on time, on budget, sometimes under budget, and with integrity. And our members are looking for access to opportunities, as well as something that you don't address, which is access to capital. This is the right time to do this. Everything that we've had interactions with your staff, James, definitely Jesse, Don, we've had great conversations, so the right people in place. As we know also, with all the projects that are coming down the pipe, there's a lot of opportunities to be able to have opportunities for contractors across the state of Illinois. And then we have members who are ready now, members who are already CDB pre-qualified, and members who want to be CDB pre-qualified. So this is the right time, but we do have to address some concerns. And so before we talk about solutions, we really want to talk about some of the concerns too as well. But going down the agenda, our request is really simple. Request is we'd like the appropriate folks, and we can talk about that offline, from the Capital Development Board to commit to a monthly meeting with us. It can be a quarterly face-to-face because we all have different things going on, but it might be face-to-face sometimes, but monthly at least a conference call, and maybe a quarterly face-to-face meeting. Because really with the high touches, that's going to have all of us drive to results. Purpose of the meeting, a few things, and it's right here on the agenda, to address the barriers of entry for African American vendors. And I'll back that up with some data. To create a model and find models of like-minded industries where things are doing right, as far as if there's somebody that's doing a best practice in the industry that might be congruent with yours. We want to be able to just bring solutions to the table, not just say we've identified some problems, but also bring solutions to the table too as well. And then after we do that, is really track and monitor the increase, specifically with African American vendors' participation in the Capital Development Board projects. Getting to our concerns, and what I will do is, I have one for my notes. They're kind of thick packets, but I can pass these on if somebody wants to follow along. Maybe you want to, and I don't know if anybody else. But it's a basic packet. I've seen another one where we want to do.
You can split right here.
Yes. And everybody else, sorry, this was just a thick packet. It would have cost everybody a lot of money to pass these out. But here are the concerns. The general lack of participation by African American vendors in CDB projects. What I have in front of us, the first 2 pages are your 2016 and 2017 BEP numbers. And so what you'll see is on a $147 million budget, your BEP goals 24,000. The BEP achievement was 24 million. The achievement was 19 million. But now when we get down to drilling down to the African American projects, $1.4 million on a $147 million overall budget. So that's 1%, right at 1%. Just so you know, there's 2 pages in. Of the 12 million citizens here in the state of Illinois, African Americans make up about 14%. And so what this talks to is disparity. And the one thing that we're looking for is, if you look at the African American, which is the second largest population in the state of Illinois at 14%, 72% of the population is Caucasian in the state of Illinois. And so I think where we would be going in the wrong direction, we thought that we would take African American vendors from 1% to 72%, because it creates a different kind of disparity. So parity is just equal representation relative to the population of taxpayers here in the state of Illinois. And if you look at the next page, again, $49 million was the total budget, and the total African American participation was $406,000. And those were 13 projects. So it's not just the dollar amount aggregately, but it's also the dollar amount of the projects. Because if you look at it in the first page, you're talking about 15 projects, $1.4 million, so average project size is a little bit less than $100,000. And if you look at the second page, it's even less than that. It should be noted, other areas like, for instance, the Asian population, that same period of time where African Americans did 1.4 million, did 6.8 million. And they represent less than 5% of the population. So again, it goes to showing the disparity. And this is within the BEP span, not the total span. So when you look at the representation, obviously there's something going on that needs to be right-sized as far as opportunities happen. So, that's the aggregate now, aggregate spend. But then there's specific areas of spend with emergency projects, and I'm talking about the discretionary selection projects. So that's specifically emergency projects, the director-selected projects, the IDIQ, which is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, and then also the best interest of the state projects. In those areas, and one thing that I'll do is, again, we want to bring this up to solutions, and all this is the past. We've got some people here who've been here for a while, who've been champions, who've worked through things, but a lot of this is new, so this is a clean slate going forward. But we have to see where we're coming from to understand how to go forward. Saying that, I will apologize to you all, or apologize publicly if I'm taking a stretch or a leap on this one, but I don't think I have done a lot of research. In these areas of emergency, director selected projects, IDIQ, and best interest state projects, I see 0% participation in these areas for African American firms, which causes a huge concern. And if there's something in the data that you say, oh no, we found these, I will apologize publicly, but to my knowledge, there's been 0%. So we have to change that in those specific areas. And we go to our collective opportunity. It's very simple in the collective opportunity is to create a results-driven strategy to increase African American vendor participation in CDB projects. And so, again, say, the opportunities are here as far as the spend. The team is here on the CDB side from our interaction again. A lot of interaction with Jesse. If I'm not mentioning your name, I just haven't had any interaction with you, so I can't speak to it. But definitely with James, with Jesse, with Don, the team is available. We've got the vendors who are ready, willing, and able with a demonstrated ability to perform in their respective body of work, and they're CDB pre-qualified. So what we have to do is figure out through these monthly meetings on how to connect the dots to realize opportunities that benefit both the Capital Development Board and our constituents. One thing that really needs to be noted too as well is we have to look at the process of getting vendors pre-qualified as well. And that's a huge thing. We have numerous examples of vendors who have either total residential bodies of work or commercial bodies of work that don't go up to the $43,700 that you need, and you need 5 instances of that, proven references of that happening. To give you statistics, at $43,700, in the state of Illinois, there are 144,000 black businesses in the state of Illinois. The average revenue size for African-American owned businesses in the state of Illinois is $59,000. So if you look at that revenue size versus what's happening, whether it is deliberate, which it's not, or something that is just systematic, it systematically denies opportunities for African-American vendors because there's not an ability to build the capacity. So we need to look at a way to deal with the lion's share of the firms that might not be able to meet that $43,700 in terms of demonstrated commercial projects and having 5 references on doing that. We understand that's actually written into, I think it's an administrative rule possibly. So we have to look into how to move that, because the one other thing we do have is we do have African-American vendors who have the bonding capacity to be able to handle the work. And we talk about bonding capacity, we have vendors who can get $500,000 or $250,000 or $1 million in bonding capacity, which means that it's on the insurance agent and more so the contractor to make sure they perform well. But the risk is transferred over to the bonding company and not Capital Development Board. It's something that we need to think about. So how do we look at a vendor's bonding capacity and the body of work they're bringing to the table as opportunities to get into the Capital Development Board projects? My understanding, your projects go from 30,000 to somewhere around 3 million is where the lion's share of your projects are. I could be wrong on that, but I think I'm pretty close. Yes. And so if that's where 80% of your projects are, there is a space that we can actually help companies who might not be like the members who are CDB pre-qualified to be able to get a demonstrated body of work as prime contractors. One other thing that I put before you is within this packet, and we can talk about it, is an example of a sister organization, IDOT. And even though they have it on the books, there's still work that IDOT has to do. But it's on the books where they have an office that specifically looks at workforce diversity and diversity. We know funds are limited, but there's always volunteer task force that can do things of that nature. The other thing that IDOT actually has is they have places where they look at, I know they're governed by different rules because of course those are federal rules, the CFR 26. But they actually can come forth. But one thing that they do have in place, and even though they're limited because they can't really delineate between different ethnic groups or women-owned business, they just have to say this full represented class. So even though with their restrictions, they're still able to go into some of their administrative rules and say there's things in our rules that actually prohibit women and minority-owned firms from participating and getting pre-qualified to be able to bid on IDOT work, and they have the discretion to go in and actually modify those rules. And that's actually in the packet too as well. And then the last thing is they have target marketing. So if you do find that there is some type of discrimination going on inherent in the system, what they do is they take their total spend, they multiply it by the percentage they have to spend in the minority and women area, and they automatically set that money aside specifically for minority-owned and women-owned firms. And I think it even goes deeper into that and say if they still see disparity within a group, they can even set projects aside specifically for a group to be able to address the disparity. So appreciate you all listening to what I have to say. I definitely want to hear if there are any responses, but really what we want to do is, it doesn't get solved in this hour that we have to talk, but it goes through a commitment which we have on our side, is to find solutions. And I know just with our conversation with folks at the Capital Development Board, we've been open to conversations, but now we just have to go from conversations to driving results specifically with African American owned properties. Thank you for the time.
You've given us lots of points to discuss. I think Jesse would like to make a few remarks, if that's okay.
I always appreciate the conversation, and I believe that your comments are right, spot on. I think we're in the right direction. We're finally agreeing on the concerns and the challenges, and I'm very happy for that. So the numbers we have and the numbers by the time they get to CMS after they're scrubbed, there's a little discrepancy in the numbers for one reason. And I'm going to give you specific on everything.
Perfect.
If a black contractor is on one of our jobs and his certification is lost, I don't get credit anymore. Deducted. But he's still on our job, I can't get rid of him. So that's one little issue, but it's still, we're still behind the eight ball on the participation when it comes to, and I want to be very specific, African Americans. You made a very good point. Asian firms have less contracts and more dollars. For one simple reason, they're bidding as primes. They're at the table bidding as primes. African Americans, contract count is higher than all the other minorities, but less than the white women. Because in central southern Illinois, it's usually white women. And if a lot of my projects are let in central southern Illinois, you're going to get the goals are harder to separate, so it's a combined goal. Okay, so that's just the reality. We have done a good job, when I say we, is the African American community has done a good job of getting some support based on what we had in the past. But I don't want to talk about subcontracting. I want to talk about prime. Because we are a small agency with bite-sized projects that if you can do a $100,000, $200,000 project on your own, you need to be pre-qualified, right? And bid as a prime. So when you come to the pre-bid meeting, you sit with a prime contractor that has capacity to do higher work. You're going to compete against him, or you can be his solution. It's just how does he want to? You could be his partner, or you could be his. If I come in with a sharper pencil, I'm going to take the job from you. And they need to understand that you are pre-qualified. The other thing that goes through that contractor's prime mind is if he is pre-qualified, then he must know how to do the work. Otherwise, why would he be pre-qualified? So now they see you not as a, I got to include them and it's going to cost me more money because he knows what he's doing. I'm pre-qualified. Either I can partner with you on this job or some other job, or I'm going to be your competition. So that changes the mindset. So my point is, I want to have that conversation on a monthly meeting on how do we increase the pre-qualified pool. Because that's what's going to, I'm measured on these numbers. Right? So let's identify those firms with the capacity and understand each one has different challenges. So let's sit with each one and identify their challenges. And then internally, how do we get the whole pool so it makes sense? So it makes sense. Yes, sir.
Jesse, I've been to several meetings today, and so most of your pre-qualified pool of African-American firms are going to come from Cook County, right? Because you already said that most of your downstate are mostly white women.
I think Peoria has some talent.
I know that these.
But yes, the majority is good.
Yeah, but the majority is Chicago. So then, I guess my question would be is, how much of your work is north of I-80? because then, you know, that pool of people, the pool of contractors are above I-80 for the most part. And I don't know, you know, 80% of them is above I-80 African Americans and another 20% below I-80 or something like that. And so I guess what I'm getting at is the pool of contractors versus where the work is.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And I'm trying to at least establish the fact that we can get pre-qualified. You know, for the past 4 years, all I could sell was get certified, get pre-qualified, and get ready. Because there's no work. So there's really nothing to showcase. You know, now it's time to really get pre-qualified and understand the process. What those monthly meetings is for those firms that are going through their pre-qual and are having some issues that we might be able to clarify. And then more importantly, you know, have that conversation, where's that pre-bid meeting? And I'm talking on the construction side. On the AE side, you have to, you know, you're a professional, it's a different mindset. And I'm gonna let Brett talk about, on the professional side, some of the success, and Larry likes to say, we're gonna celebrate some successes, because the last couple of selections, we have had some successes. Because on the AE side, it's a whole new strategy, right? And that's where we're gonna have those conversations.
And just to go, oh, I'm
I
sorry.
don't want to hog up the whole thing, but I'm just happy that we finally agree that these are the challenges. On the emergencies, if the African-American firms are not pre-qualified, are not doing the work, then it's hard to be on emergencies. So if we have the pool and they're working, then I'm going to advocate within CDB.
As far as contractors go, it is really nice that we're having good conversations now, because the opportunities that I'm seeing for prime contractors is more than it has been in the past. And I don't just mean for the number of projects, but what we're having for a lot of different reasons, whatever they are, even in the Chicago area, we're having projects where we get no bidders or we get one bidder. And there is a minority firm that's not African American who has gotten different projects that are rather significant size, you know, 3 million plus. They're the only bidder. So if we can work with you on getting more of your firms pre-qualified, you know, a lot of times, you know, what we have heard in the past is, but it's hard to compete with those established firms who've been there and they always, you know, they sharpen their pencil and they beat us. But what I'm saying is that we're having a lot more projects where no bidders, or we had a roofing project at the appellate courthouse in Elgin. It took us like 3 times to get one bidder on that project. And then we had a window project here recently where nobody bid it, so now it's out to bid again. And I was talking with the Bay on a firm getting pre-qualified for that, and we finally got that accomplished. But again, what I'm saying is that right now, for whatever reason it is, maybe there's a lot of work in the private sector and whatnot, but we don't have 10, 15 bidders on a project. We maybe have 1 or 2, or just say 3 or 4, and they tend to be the same bidders over and over. So there are opportunities to jump in and be competitive.
The other factor is there's a mindset that the state is broke and we don't pay our bills,
That might be playing into all that too.
right?
Yeah.
And they lump us in with any other government body they dealt with. I can tell you, CDB pays between 7 and 20 days. And we don't start work unless we have the funds. So you are going to get paid, because we don't operate out of the general fund. We're separate. And we're small projects. And when I sit with certain contractors, you know, they want me to tell them all this information, and then they want me to shut up, because I don't want any more competition. So I don't have any help, because when I spread the message, they want me to kind of, okay, good. Please don't share that with everybody until I get some work. So you understand my challenge. But this is an organization, I think you're trying to bring your members in. I think your pool of members need to know this, need to understand that CDB is, let's separate the government bodies, and let's deal with each one within their own process, their own way of doing business. So I'm making a commitment every month you need me, wherever you need me, I'm there. And let's work on pre-qualification. I am, and I don't know if I can say this, Jacqueline, but I'm having conversations, and they're very, very preliminary on addressing the bonding within CDB and some mobilization dollars within CDB, and that's very preliminary, but I know the challenges, and I'm trying to address them internally from the big picture. You know, now that we have work, here's how we increase the pool. I know what we need, but I need some help, and I think people are listening because the window of opportunities come and go. Right now it's open. We better get what we need now. And if we let it go, we have 4 years. We better get what we need. Hopefully it stays.
Not to get off the beaten path, though, there's a lot of conversation about capital budget. Okay, and right now you guys are putting out a pretty good amount of work, correct? So what does the world look like now when you have a capital budget, you have a significant number of more contracts? What does that change the world we live in, or does that make it, I mean, how do you see that, and what's the likelihood of a capital budget from you guys' perspective, and what do you guys got on the table?
Right now, if I can quickly just, and I want to hand it off to Brad if you want to. We have issues like only one bidder or no bidders because everybody's busy. So that's why we need to increase the talent. And then on the AE side, I'm going to let Brad discuss what we have been witnessing. So once those firms are, once those projects are designed, they're coming over to me on the minority side. So I'm going to let Brad discuss what.
Yeah, I don't think that directly addresses your question. I'm not really in a position to answer a question about a capital budget.
And I can add something just real quick.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I think we have work to do at CDB for issues out of our control. We had a rough last few years. I mean, we had no work. We have to work on building the trust across all vendors, and we're trying to do that. I think the only way we'll be successful in doing that is to have successful projects going forward where people are getting paid. As to how it looks going forward, we've been working very hard to beat the drum on deferred maintenance. You know, we will still, what it appears is, you know, there'll still be the need for a new building and new structure, but the state's like a slumlord. I mean, we've got these structures all over the state that are not being maintained and need significant work at this point in time. If we continue to be successful in trying to get our deferred maintenance needs met, what that most likely will look like is smaller projects and more work, as opposed to a large number of large shovel-ready projects. So I don't know if that's helpful. And I'll let Brent continue on with his QBS discussion.
I'm going to start with positive. We'll go from there. We've seen, I think, some positive things in the last year with regards to AE selections, and that is only possible through greater participation on the part of our vendors. You know, looking backwards at FY18, we had about 300 different submittals received from firms. So far in fiscal year 19, that's up to 652. Now, to put some things in perspective, last year we only received 3 submittals from AEs that were African American owned for projects. That number's up to 17 so far this year. And that still sounds like a really small number, but it represents, and it is, it represents 2.6% of that total number of submittals. But it's a tremendous improvement over last year, which was about even with the year before that. When I look at the selections we're making in fiscal year 18, we made 75 total selections. That's it. And there just wasn't many projects. So far in FY19, we're at 157. That's more than double the number of projects. The number of African American firms that have been selected is 6 times what it was last year, but it's still not enough. It's representing about 4.5%. Kind of puts it in line with the number of submittals we're receiving. Michael's firm and IGA are 2 of the firms that have been selected in the last year because they're submitting.
You can select us multiple times at a time. We could go 5, 6, 7, 8.
In the committee that selected IDG, I walked out of that meeting excited because IDG had never done work with the Capital Development Board prior to that. I mean, and my job as the chair is to try to push this stuff out and be fair and consider all aspects of the selection criteria. Where we're not doing so good are on the director's selections. And that covers the emergencies and the best interest of the state. And what you've got listed is discretionary. While it may seem like those would be the easy places to pick that up, that's not necessarily the case. We have procedures we follow. And on emergency projects, one of the things we're looking at for an AE is how close are they to the project site. Because on an emergency or project with an emergency nature, they're going to have to be out on that site more often than on a typical project. So, that is a part of the consideration. It's also important to note that on the best interest selections, and we've done 14 of them so far this year, the majority of those are for projects where an institution of higher ed, specifically a community college, has done a selection through QBS, and it's simply being transferred over to CDB for management. So it's not a selection we're making or in control of. And then a lot of those other best interest selections are projects where it's a continuation of services or the continuation of a contract. If a contract hits its 10-year statutory limit, we have to execute a best interest selection to keep that firm working on that project. Similarly, if we've got a firm that we've engaged to do a preliminary study or analysis of a condition, we will sometimes use a best interest selection to keep that firm on board and keep the project moving forward. It's not to say we can't do better, and not to say we shouldn't do better. The way those happen is my staff runs a report of all the firms identified in the geographical area around the project, and then I start going.
Just fine, especially on either the design side or the contractor side. You just build your reputation with CDB.
Do you have a webinar?
Right now, there's people in the room right now that had never received a CDB project, but after they started interacting with a Black Chamber of Commerce, and after they started interacting with us, now they've all received work now. So it's important that we interact, it's important that we meet. We've had people, CDB doesn't have a problem with giving a minority firm a large contract. You had gotten a large contract with us in the past. How large was that contract, if you don't mind?
Construction is about $43 million.
$43 million. So we're not afraid to give you a contract, but you have to go through the processes and then you can get paid.
I believe you're not afraid. We just don't know you're there. Because you need to work.
The gentleman who's had his hands up
Yes.
back here.
Yeah, I'm so
And
sorry.
I want to pay, you
apologize.
had your hand up.
Oh, no, he answered the question.
Yes. So I got a question.
Okay,
My
good.
question
Thank
now. Speaking of the project, we were very excited about the fact that you had a project that you dusted off and you put it back on the scale. And Mr. Jonte was a person who it benefited. But like anything else, you get started and then you stop. There are some things right now that I'd like him to speak to, and I need you guys' help to make sure that he continues on the path so that he can finish out the project and we can celebrate real successes. So Eve, in front of all of us, we want you to ask him for the help so we can follow up.
My name is Yves Jonty. I am the founder and president of the Architects Enterprise Limited. My firm is 30 years old. We competed for the SSC project and we were awarded the project. That was in 2014. We started the project in 2014 we went all the way to schematic design, and the project was put on hold 2015, March of 2015. Incidentally, that's right after we moved into a brand new office. So here we are now, about 3.5 years later, 4 years later. The project was reactivated. But the point is, the project was 43 million at that time. But after 4 years, it's no longer there. It is about 62 million just construction. So we have now submitted, and it's been approved, DD. Right? So we would really appreciate not really holding on and going to see the Avamart, at least to authorize us to go into see. This is the point at which we are. So the trouble, not trouble, but the challenges with a firm when your project gets started. You have staff that's dedicated to that project. What do you do with them? So in my case, I still pay them. They are still accruing vacation and all of these, and all benefits. So to make a very long story short, I would really appreciate a nod in getting the project restarted.
Why don't we discuss that on the side, you know, about your mod? But are you still bidding on other projects as well to keep your staff going?
I will be.
Because that's important. I mean, if you got that project, we can't control when something happens and projects stop. That's not what we didn't stop the project. Understood. But what I'm saying is that you still should be seeking business, seeking other projects, submitting 255s on work that's ongoing, and we can talk about how we can get that going.
Well, I have, if I may, I have a couple of notes, by the way. You mentioned the fact that you have it's basically roofs that you're going to be doing. We were the managing architect for Chicago Public Schools, where we assessed hundreds of schools. What we have found, our experience is that when you do roofs, just the roof, if there's any deterioration, you go into the flashing. Any deterioration, you go into the mason. Any deterioration, you go down the mason, if you will. So I am wondering with this note, as part of the roof replacement, do you account for masonry? Say building envelope, maybe that's something that you might want to consider. For many, many reasons, because one of the things is that you minimize the presence of contractors at the facility. You see what I'm saying? So that may be
So one of the challenges that we face as an agency is sort of this 10-year capital budget cycle. And what we've been trying to do in CDB is stress the importance of deferred maintenance and continuing appropriations on an annual basis for deferred maintenance. If they want to do a large capital program with the big projects, maybe every 10 years, that's great, but we need to continue with the funding for deferred maintenance. So it's not that we're just going to be doing roofing projects, but as we are in 19, this current year, we did get a lump sum for deferred maintenance. It was introduced again in the additional talks. We're trying to kind of change the status quo so that there is going to be continuous appropriation authority for the deferred maintenance projects so that we can address not just the roofs, but then the issues that have come from ignoring. Like I said, there's $8 billion in backlog. So, but we have to change sort of the status quo, and every year we introduce a budget.